Africa, NJ Ayuk. NJ, a very good afternoon to you and welcome to Channel Africa.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
I don't know whether or not I should start by saying drill, baby, drill, but we'll get to that. What are the, you have condemned this, and what are your main concerns regarding the UK's decision to withdraw this 1.15 billion US dollars from Mozambique's LNG project?
I think this was it's a really bad decision. Economically, financially, and also bad for global energy security, bad for Mozambique need to develop its natural gas to power Mozambique and also supply gas to the region. But you know what? It is a speed bump. It's not a stop. Mozambique is going to move with this project. I think it's for most Africans and that are concerned about Mozambique and want to see this nation grow and thrive. It is very, very alarming that we just came out of a G20 in South Africa where everybody, all the global leaders showed up to South Africa, and it was basically an African G20 with a strong commitment to African industrialization, African prosperity, African development. And 1 week right after that, what's the first thing the UK does and the Netherlands? They pulled back financing out of this country, which could go from zero to the third largest producer of natural gas in the world. It sends the wrong message, and that comes with a big question that did those G20 commitments for African prosperity really mean anything? How are you going to make a commitment and then 1 week later you start by sending signals of dismantling the most core part of any development, gas development, financing for industrialization? But I think, TotalEnergies is a great company. They have been resilient on this, working together with President Chapo and the Mozambicans. They're going to find a way, and they're already having solutions to make this work.
Speaking about finding a way and making it work, NJ, how significant was the UK export finance support to the project's overall financing structure?
It was 10% of the financing for this project. So 10% is a huge it's a huge number. But you know what? Right now, you're at a position where you have to look at equity among the shareholders of the project and see how you spread that out and see how they can basically raise that funding to accomplish this. So it's not even a great financial decision from the UK, because that natural gas is so good for the world and for Mozambique. Don't forget, they're basing this out of climate change and low carbon and all of that. Mozambique's natural gas is going to be one of the most low carbon natural gas that's going to be produced in the world. It's going to be so carbon friendly than anything you've ever seen. So I think the project, because of that and the stats around it, of course the country has gone through some difficult times when it comes to security in Cabo Delgado, but guess what? They worked it together. They put troops on the ground. They got the communities back. The communities are 100% with these projects. They're trying to get it done. We should be focusing on that. How about we let Mozambicans make their choices and not necessarily have people with external agendas on the radical climate agendas come to destroy this project and, in a sense, actually affect the country and its growth.
And NJ, I mean, the British business minister, in part, cited increased risks, and UK taxpayers' interest as a reason or some of the reasons for withdrawing the support. In your view, what's the Africa Energy Chamber's take on the provided reason? Does it hold water in your view?
I love this guy. He's an amazing guy, but he's dead wrong. And I'll tell you why. They based a human rights report which was written by people that never set foot in Mozambique. You are going to make a decision, a $1 billion investment, citing human rights concern on a report written by somebody that never set foot in the country. That is something that is clear circumspect. And you know what's even funny? That same risk assessment and looking at risk to UK taxpayers and risk on the project, that same assessment was done by another export finance, that is the US Exim Bank. They did the same kind of due diligence. They did the same kind of compliance and all risk analysis. And guess what they did? They provided $4.5 billion in financing. You know, sometimes I'd rather take Trump, who doesn't come to the G20 and tell me he loves me, and he finances a project, than the ones who come hold your hands and share and tell you and hug you and sing all that kumbaya, then go back and cancel financing for you. That is actually very, very troubling. The Americans looked at the project, did a due diligence, did a risk analysis, and they gave 4.5. The British looked at the same thing and did a risk analysis and got somebody who's never been to Mozambique, and they say, oh, we're pulling back. It is bigger than that. It is an issue of a radical climate agenda that they're pursuing, and also the fear of an African nation growing to be stronger and better and producing the natural resources it needs to drive its own environment. It scares some people.
Yeah, and indeed. So do you perhaps think that maybe the Mozambican government should look elsewhere, look for funding at the other financial institutions like your World Bank, and what immediate financial or operational disruptions could this create for TotalEnergies and project partners?
Well, Mozambican government is going to have to look at that, but let me tell you this. The World Bank is not going to fund natural gas projects. It should be. It's reconsidering that stand on it. And we've been advocating that the World Bank should get right into these projects and provide funding. The World Bank is a development institution. It's not an institution that is supposed to continue providing access to poverty. It should be giving access to development and dealing with African energy poverty issues. You know, in Uganda, when TotalEnergies ran into this same problem, you know who stepped up? African Finance Corporation, Afri-Exim Bank. They stepped up and they closed the gap. I would urge Mozambicans to engage African financial institutions or maybe Asian financial institutions, Middle East financial institutions, and really drive that, because we don't want to go on this societal path that Western countries are taking themselves to, with their radical views around climate change that goes into stopping global development and human flourishing. Of course, TotalEnergies is a world-class institution. You got to see what they do. They have technologies that's going to produce low-carbon LNG. They have been working hard on the ground to respect communities. They have been providing a lot of corporate social responsibility and working empowering a lot of young people and women in that country. Their balance sheet is huge. I'm very confident that TotalEnergies, they've already put out 10% equity out there to see, and they're going to raise the funding needed to get this project. Like what I said, it's a speed bump, it's not a roadblock, and it's definitely not a showstopper. We're going to get it, but this is a warning for Africans. We have to build our own financial institutions to step up in times like this and stop the reliance on Western financial institutions that will somehow fail you in the middle. Right when you're about to take off, they pull the rock on you. Dangote Refinery proves that in Nigeria. See what he's done. We need to be driving that, and that's why we support the African Energy Bank, so that we can rally African private capital and even use African pension funds or things like this to really be able to power and industrialize our continent, rather than wait for others to dictate to us their morals. We're sitting writing reports from places where they've never been to.
Indeed, NJ, I think you're spot on. The over-reliance has been a big conversation in the continent. But as if we hit the home stretch of this conversation, in your view, how can the African Energy Bank step in as we see the Western countries pulling, their funding?
In Nigeria today, last week, the African Energy Bank basically gave us signal that they are ready for the launch. We're going to have an African Energy Bank. There's no question about it. Capital has been raised, seed funding is there, contributions from nations have been there. It's not yet complete, but it's coming together. So African Energy Bank is not going to be the only solution, but it's going to also be that pathway, that bridge that comes in at this critical time. We've realized that sometimes we're going to have to look inward. We're going to have to look at our partners in Asia and the Middle East, working together with African private capital. I can tell you, first quarter 2026, you're going to hear news of a big launch of for a very transformative project, the African Energy Bank, and it's going to send a clear message that it's time for us to take our development in our own hands, because we put in pension funds in a lot of these Western financial institutions that wouldn't even finance your own growth. They wouldn't finance gas in Africa, but they would finance gas in Europe. You know that at the same time, the British are saying this, they say natural gas is growing in Europe, but it's not growing in Africa, so they can't finance it. That hypocritical nature of it needs to stop. And this is time where Africa needs to come together and stand with Mozambique to drive this project up.
Right. Executive Chairman of the African Energy Chamber, NJ Ayuk. Thank you so much for indeed making the time.
Thank you. It's an honor.
That conversation brings us to exactly 6